Welcome into another episode of Locked On Phillies. And in today's episode, I'm going to tell you why we should be very impressed by the Philadelphia Phillies' performance in the final two games of their series with the Arizona Diamondbacks, and why, sorry folks, I'm going to have to say I told you so. Also, we're going to preview what you need to know ahead of the Phils matchup with the Detroit Tigers. The Tigers, not the punching bag you might assume they would be based on their recent performance. And the Phils are back on top in the standings. How much does it matter? How did they get there? And what does it tell us about how good this team actually is? All of that on today's episode.
You are Locked On Phillies, your daily Philadelphia Phillies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, this is Locked On Phillies. I am Connor Thomas, your host. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for joining us today. Please make sure, if you have not yet, you're leaving ratings and reviews wherever you consume your podcast, and subscribing to the YouTube if you're watching us on YouTube, or if you haven't checked us out on YouTube, go over there. See what the video quality is like. I mean, it's way better, I think, to watch it and be able to put a face to the voice, and subscribing to the YouTube is the number one way you can help us out here on Locked On Phillies. So appreciate that. Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to PrizePicks.com/LockedOnMLB and use code, it's all in lowercase, LockedOnMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Go ahead and check out our friends over at PrizePicks. Let's jump right into it. The Philadelphia Phillies ended up taking care of business against the Arizona Diamondbacks after dropping game one. They went on a roll, won the next two games of the series, including a 12-run outburst in game two. And then yesterday, Cristopher Sanchez was awesome. He was absolutely shut down for the Philadelphia Phillies. It's his first start since receiving a 4-year extension. By the way, we did not have the details of the monetary value of the contract when I did the last episode. So it's 4 years, $22 million. It's an absolute bargain, especially if he's going to throw like he threw yesterday. So let's get into what happened in yesterday's series-ending game, which we'll start with the starting pitching. Sanchez's line in this one, 7 innings pitched. That's exactly where you want to be if you're a great starting pitcher. 3 hits allowed. Perfect. No runs, no walks, 4 strikeouts. I mean, it's just flat-out domination. That is what you're supposed to do if you're going to be a top-level arm in baseball, and Cristopher Sanchez is your 4th or 5th starter, depending on how you look at it and how much you trust the initial setup of the rotation. He's clearly proven to be significantly more than that this year. It's why he was given the extension, and he showed you that he was very, very good yesterday. His ERA is down to a 2.67. That's one of the top marks in the National League. It's one of the top marks in all of baseball. And that's your 4th starter. That's a dude who, if you play in the when you play, hopefully, in the divisional series, you might not even have to throw him because you have Nola and Wheeler and Suarez. So, yeah, an embarrassment of riches on the mound for the Philadelphia Phillies. Jose Alvarado went out there through the 8th inning, perfect inning, 2 strikeouts. Jeff Hoffman goes out there. He did allow 3 hits, which got kind of sketchy there, and allowed a run in the 9th inning. The Phillies were very close to a shutout of the Diamondbacks. Had a strikeout, works out of danger. Everything is all good for one Jeffrey Hoffman as he got that all done. Cristopher Sanchez gets the win, and it was another comfortable game for the Philadelphia Phillies. Not quite as comfortable as the 12-1, where everybody went nuts. Everybody who was in the lineup or was inserted into the lineup at any point got on base in game 2. This one was a little bit quieter offensively. The Phils didn't have the firepower that they did when they had a position player pitching at the end of the game of game 2, but Nick Castellanos, big RBI in the bottom of the 2nd inning to get the scoring started. David Dahl, I saw this comment on Instagram or Instagram or Twitter. Either way, someone was responding to a David Dahl home run clip, and they said David Dahl is on like a Linsanity run right now. If you remember Jeremy Lin with the New York Knicks and how he just seemed to hit game winner after game winner after game winner on the basketball court. Now, Dahl isn't doing quite that much. It's not national or international acclaim, but he's been really good since coming up for the Phillies. It's part of the reason that Johan Rojas is down in AAA right now. David Dahl had an RBI single in the 6th. So for the longest time, a 2 RBI single. For the longest time, it was 1-0 in this game. And then Dahl goes ahead and plates 2. Bryce Stott and Brandon Marsh are the ones who scored on that play there. And then Bryson Stott had an RBI single to score Bryce Harper in the bottom of the 7th inning, make it 4-0. The Phillies had more opportunities to score more runs, but when you got a pitching staff like you do and a bullpen throwing that well and guys getting rested, 4 will get it done, and it did yesterday. Marte, the only guy to hit an RBI for the Diamondbacks. He had an RBI single to score Perdomo in the 9th inning, and that's all the Diamondbacks can muster. A measly 2 runs in the final 2 games of the series. So the Phils 16 runs in the final 2 games of this series. That's what we call beating the brakes off of another team. More on that in a second. But just run through the box score and just see the guys who are the big performers. Bryce Harper, 2 for 4 with a run scored. He's a monster. Alec Boehm, 2 for 3 with a run scored. Also a monster. A great guy to protect Bryce Harper. Kyle Schwarber, who has been heating up recently, went 0 for 5. Okay, he's still batting .254. You'll take that. Trey Turner, 1 for 5. Good to see him get rolling again. Nick Castellanos, another hit, another RBI. He had himself a nice day. Bryson Stott, a hit and an RBI, a run scored. Brandon Marsh, a hit and a run scored. David Dahl, 2 for 4, 2 RBIs. Like, it's just everybody up and down the lineup. The only guys that were not on base, Kyle Schwarber went hitless and walkless. Christian Pache, pinch hit. But I think he actually might have just been a defensive replacement. I don't quite remember. My apologies. Garrett Stubbs also went 1 for 4. So the only guy you're looking at that really played the whole game and didn't get on is Pache was 0 for 0. I'm an idiot. I can just read the damn box score. Kyle Schwarber's the only guy who did not get on base or get a hit. So that's a pretty good day, and it would probably indicate that you should have scored more runs, but that's fine. I'm not in the business of being picky. When you find ways to win ball games, you'll take that a billion times out of a billion. And I already talked about this on the radio, but I haven't really gotten into it on this podcast yet. And it's important because it's a tweet that I put out, and we're going to talk a little bit in the final segment about the mindset of the fan base. But I tweeted this out Friday night, 10:04 p.m., right after the Philadelphia Phillies game 1 against the Diamondbacks went final, the game that they lost to start off this series with Taijuan Walker on the mound, who I think everybody put that loss largely on the shoulders of Taijuan Walker. Said, tough one. The Phils are going to beat the brakes off this team in the next 2 games. Book it. And listen to some of these responses that I got. They don't have the lineup to do that to really any team, especially good ones. Incorrect. Better be right. I was. LOL, okay. I don't know what you're laughing at. Surely this will age well. It did. Someone just put the asterisk and said, get swept, saying the Phillies are going to get swept. Incorrect. Won the series. Stop the homer nonsense. You sound like a 10-year-old. No, I was right. Like, there's just but there's something deeper here, right? And we're going to talk a little bit about it in our final segment, but I want to just touch on it here. What is it with this fan base and not recognizing a small part of this fan base? I know I've been down to the Citizens Bank Park like 15, 16 times so far this year. I know that at the ballpark, that place is electric. I know the large majority of the fan base is in a position where they realize how good this team is. They're excited, and I get that. I'm not saying this is everybody, so if this is not you, do not take it personally. Don't think I'm under this misguided notion that the fan base isn't excited about this team. I know you are. I promise I know you are. But there are just some people that cannot accept that this team is as good as they look. They are. They're unbelievable. This could be the best Philadelphia Phillies team in the history of the franchise. It legitimately could be. By win total, by talent level, by end result. All of these things are within the realm of possibility. And still, I tweet something about, okay, well, the Phillies are going to take care of business the next 2 days. Nothing. Like, just, you're being a homer and this, that, and the other thing. Are there people out there watching a different baseball team than you and I? Or maybe you're one of them that believes that I'm too chesty sometimes with my predictions. Folks, the reason I do it, right, is, I'll say this again because I said it on air this morning. I'm not doing it to, convince you I'm right. I know I'm right. Sorry, that might sound cocky, but I know I'm right about how good this baseball team is. The reason I'll have this fight day in and day out, have this argument over and over and over again with folks on social media, folks that call me on the radio, folks that comment on here that are trying to say, oh, well, this Phillies team isn't as good as they look. They're not good enough to do this. They're not good enough to do that. They need to do this. They need to do that. The reason I'm having that argument is because that has to be a downright miserable way to consume Philadelphia Phillies baseball, especially when this team is amazing. It's a miserable way to consume anything. Could you imagine every time you turn on a TV show, every time you put on an album of music to listen to, the whole time you're just like, well, this is going to stink. This is going to stink. Oh, that song was good. The next one's probably going to stink. Oh, that episode was good. The next one's going to stink. It's not as good as you think it. Like, do you not root for this team? Are you not a Phillies fan if you're doing that? I understand that this isn't a perfect baseball team. I'm not telling you they're perfect, but I'm telling you they're pretty darn good. And I don't want people out there, like, part of my job here on Locked On Phillies, at least the way I interpret it, is to make sure that you guys get as much enjoyment out of this team as possible, whether that's lightening the mood when they lose, whether that's ripping the players that are not carrying their own weight. And I know that is music to people's ears sometimes because you want your thoughts to be validated when you see something. If you believe Taijuan Walker's a problem with this team right now, I've talked numerous times about why I think you're right. But it's also to make sure that when things are going good, we appreciate how good we have it. Went through a decade-long playoff drought to get here. Had a couple of tough season-ending losses the past 2 years, World Series one, NLCS the other. What was that team? So God forbid, I'm trying to talk you into knowing that this team is really good and good things are going to happen and you should just enjoy the ride. But I don't know. I guess I got to continue to keep fighting that good fight. And I will. And the Phillies will give me ammo too because they're a darn good baseball team. But coming up next, they're going to be playing the Detroit Tigers. They go on the road out there to the Motor City. And the Tigers are actually not bad this year. They're not like the White Sox caliber of, oh, well, this team has no chance. No, they're just a couple games under 500. They can be a dangerous team. They have some upside. And my goodness, are you getting a pitching matchup for the ages in game one? Okay, maybe not the ages, but certainly for this season. So much to get into, so much juicy stuff with this series. We'll discuss it coming up as we continue today's episode of Locked On Phillies. First, though, I want to tell you about my friends over at FanDuel. You know FanDuel, come on. And you know that I love sports. I love them so much, I never want them to stop. But the playoffs are winding down. The final game of the Stanley Cup Finals is tonight. The NBA Finals have already ended. We get fewer games. And the sports aren't sportsing like I want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone. Every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com/lockedon and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Visit FanDuel.com to look at some odds and check everything out over there. You really got to see what they have available. There's some really good stuff at FanDuel. I also want to tell you about my friends over at Prize Picks because they're America's #1 daily fantasy sports app. They got over 5 million active members. It's a great way to go day to day when it comes to how you're going to attack baseball season. Maybe you want something on the hockey game tonight. Whatever you want to do, Prize Picks is the place to do it. You can get in on the daily action with your friends, and you can become part of the Prize Picks community today and see what other people are picking. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. With 4 correct picks, all you got to get 4 things right. You pick more or less on a bunch of different stats, do it 4 times. You could turn $10 into $1,000. It's 100 times your money. Even I can do that math. And that math adds up to one thing. What are you doing not downloading Prize Picks? You got to check it out. If you're looking for promotions, Prize Picks has got you covered every week. They've got lowering selected player stat projections. So, like, let's say, for example, tonight, Bryce Harper, the normal stat would be you expect him to get more or less than 1.5 hits. They might drop that to half a hit. So Bryce Harper gets on base once via hit. You're a winner. Like, it's that easy. Prize Picks is available in more than 30 states across the country, including California, Texas, and Georgia. So go ahead and check it out. And if you download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB, you'll get a first deposit match up to $100. That's code LOCKEDONMLB on Prize Picks for a deposit match up to $100. You just pick more or pick less. It's that easy. All right, let's preview this series coming up against the Detroit Tigers. I almost said the Chicago White Sox because I brought them up in the same breath in the past segment because I don't know. Maybe it's because they're both AL Central teams. Maybe it's because they both haven't been all that good as of late. But I consider those teams very similar to one another. That is an oversight this year because the Detroit Tigers are 36-41. They're not going to be winning the World Series this year. Sorry, Tigers fans, if you tuned in for me to say something nice about your team. I think I still am. But they're not exactly a pushover either. They're not a walk through the series and have no trouble, especially with tonight's game. We'll get to tonight's game in a second, but let's just look at some of the overall numbers for the Tigers and guys to watch out for. They've been pretty good lately. You know what? Maybe I've been thinking Tigers-White Sox because they just got done playing the White Sox. The Tigers hung 11 on the White Sox yesterday in the series ender of that game. They took 2 of 3 from the White Sox. They did get swept by the Braves right before that. So when they play a good team, they're very beatable. They lost 2 of 3 to the Astros. They lost 2 of 3 to the Nationals. Like, the Tigers have not been hot as late. They've been skidding, coming back down to earth. So a good time to get them, besides the 11 runs they put up on the White Sox, but that's the White Sox. The guys that you have to look out for as far as hitting-wise, you got to look out for Riley Green, not the Riley Green that was all jacked up and was hitting BP, the country singer that did a post-game concert at Citizens Bank Park on Saturday. No, this Riley Green is batting .261 in 280 at-bats, and he also has 15 home runs. He is the guy to stay away from. No one on the team has more than 9 home runs besides Riley Green. Speaking of guys with 9 home runs, second place on the team in home runs, it's our old friend, Matt Vierling, Matty Carshield. He's listed as a third baseman now, so I guess they're playing him in the infield. I haven't really, God forbid, I missed a Detroit Tigers game, but yeah, it's hard to keep up with everybody. We know Matt Vierling well, though. But I will say, Matt Vierling, a really nice player. Batting .258, not great, not bad. 9 home runs, okay. You're kind of getting solid production out of him for what you thought he was going to be. He's a regular player for them. That's good. They also have Marcana, who he's got 247 at bats, bat 243. I mean, no one's really killing them, or killing it, I should say, average-wise on this team. The highest average mark is, Giorgella, who is batting .265. Like, I don't know. They don't really have too much offensively. And when you just look at the standings and how much they've scored, I'm just going to go to the overall standings for the runs scored section of this. And as expected, the Detroit Tigers are down in the bottom third of baseball. They've scored 320 runs. For example, the Phils have scored 390 runs. 70-run difference between teams. Yeah, that'll tell you. But I say all of that as an overview. Let's get into tonight's matchup because this is a banger of a pitching matchup. If there is something for Detroit Tigers fans to hold their hat on, I guess hang their hat on this year, it's Tarik Skubal. He's been amazing. He's one of the best pitchers in baseball. He's in conversation for the American League Cy Young Award. He is 8-3 with a 2.5 ERA and a .97 WHIP. 90 innings pitched. He struck out 105 batters. He is a tough lefty. Only given up 8 home runs. Only allowed 18 walks. That's what we call a dominant start to the season. Tough thing for Tigers fans is they're going to have to see someone even better. Another lefty. Ranger Suarez is on the mound for the Phils tonight. And anytime you see Ranger take the mound, you feel like you got a pretty darn good chance to win the game. Hey, they feel like that about their guy too. Let's compare these stats real quick, just so you can see how close Skubal has been to Ranger Suarez. Suarez, better record, 10-1. That's more product of being on a better baseball team. A 1.75 ERA. So he's got a clearly better mark in the ERA category. But the WHIP, 0.89 for Ranger, 0.97 for Skubal. Not that different. Nearly identical amounts of innings pitched. Skubal's allowed 6 more hits, but he struck out 10 more batters. So the strikeout stuff better. We know Ranger Suarez is more of a contact pitcher than your average, like, dominant ace. Skubal's walked 18. Rangers walked 19. Skubal 8 home runs. Ranger 6 home runs. Like, these are – it's not often that you see someone on the mound with comparable numbers to Ranger Suarez when he's having a year like this, but you're getting it. And that is going to make this game tonight must watch. This is the best pitching matchup in the major leagues tonight. There is nothing you should be doing tonight. I don't care that it's Game 7 of the NHL Finals. I'm sorry. Shout out to Locked On Oilers and Locked On Panthers on our NHL channel. Watch it after the game gets done because this Phillies and Tigers matchup, it's not one that you see just like at face value and say, oh, I got to watch that game. But when you see who's going to be on the mound, yeah, you definitely have to check that out. As far as expectations for the series, and we'll break down each game. We'll talk about Game 2 when it's time for Game 2, Game 3 when it's time for Game 3. It's a 6:40 p.m. start tonight, so plenty of time till we get to that. But expectations for the series, the Phillies absolutely should win 2 out of 3 games. They are much better at home. They go on the road here to Detroit, but not exactly a tough place to play. Weather shouldn't be too much of an issue, I don't believe. I don't know. You're the significantly better offense. You're facing their ace in Game 1, but you have your best pitcher so far this year on the mound. At least I think Ranger Suarez has been your best pitcher. You can make an argument it's Zach Wheeler, but whatever the case may be, you got Suarez on the mound. And yeah, you should just, even if you don't win this game, you should win the next 2. If you do win this game, you absolutely have to win the series. Is sweep realistic? I can't say Tarik Skubal being on the mound in this series, you can expect a sweep. I just can't do that. He's been so good. I think the Phillies should win, but I'm going to give them 2 out of 3. Be a little bit conservative with that. I learned my lesson with an earlier series against the Marlins where I said, oh, it's got to be a sweep. This team stinks, and they won a 2 out of 3, and I was annoyed. I don't want to get annoyed at winning series, so that's my breakdown of tonight's game. Again, monster pitching matchup. Be in your seat at 6:35. You don't want to miss it. Coming up next, we're going to talk about where the Philadelphia Phillies are in the standings because they are back on top overall, at least in one category of the record. Well, I'll break down what I mean. It might be a bit of a technicality. New York might get mad at me. Whatever. We'll talk about it and what it means about how good this Phillies team can be when they're at their best. All of that as we wrap up today's episode. First, though, we got to talk about the number one place for you to get your needs for that work you want to do, the handiwork and everything, Supply House. That's right. You can get supplies from the site that's made for the skilled trades, supplyhouse.com. Supplyhouse.com is the reliable way to order plumbing, HVAC, electrical products, all of that stuff online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Shop a complete inventory of over 200,000, not just 200, not 20,000, no, 200,000 parts from over 400 top brands. And you can get your order delivered right to your door with fast shipping from coast to coast. It's crazy. Who does that these days? It's basically Amazon and Supply House. And Supply House has got the knowledge of what you need to do. You need help with an order? Well, you can get expert support and industry-leading service from the friendliest folks in the business. You talk to a real person every time. You don't get that with every business. You get it with Supply House. Plus, pros in the skilled trades, you can get a competitive edge by joining SupplyHouse.com's free Trade Master program. Every Trade Master gets access to a dedicated phone line, free shipping, discounts on every order. So join thousands of trade pros already benefiting from their free membership at SupplyHouse.com/TM. TM like Trade Master. And order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies from anywhere with just a few clicks at SupplyHouse.com. Go ahead and check them out. All right, let's talk about where the Phils are in the standings because it's pretty darn good for what they've been playing like. More on that in a second. But when you look at the overall standings, the New York Yankees have the most wins in baseball. They're 52-28. But the Phils at 51-26 have the best winning percentage in all of baseball, which is the default option when it comes to the Major League standings. Not over the course of this season, not every team has played the same amount of games, so that's the safest way to do it. The Yankees only a half game back, right? But the Phils are at the top of Major League Baseball again. And here's why this is important. In their last 10 games, they're 5-5. They have just been middle of the road, 500 for a while now. I think they're like 12-12 when you go back far enough for like the last 24. Maybe it's in their last 12, they're 6-6. Bottom line is they've been 500 or hovering right around it for the past couple weeks. And still, they have the best record in baseball. You know what that means? Like, what does that say about the Philadelphia Phillies? Think for a second before I give you my answer. To me, what that means is even at their worst, they're still a 500 team, which how many teams in baseball can say that? Let's just look at overall record, right? How many teams are above 500? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 teams in baseball are above 500, which leaves 16 that are not. The Phillies, at their worst, are better than more than half of baseball. Like, that's insane. If this is what a downturn looks like for the Philadelphia Phillies, this team is unbelievable. That's like my big takeaway. I did not think they were close to the Yankees when it came to winning percentage because the Yankees have been on a tear lately, and the Phillies have been playing, like I said, 500 ball. Not only that, they have the best run differential in the major leagues, plus 114, 2 runs ahead of the Dodgers mark of plus 112, who are in second place there. I mean, that shows you not only are they winning, they're winning comfortably. Run differential, like record is a base indicator. Run differential goes a step further. You can have a good record and a low run differential and say, okay, well, this team has a little bit of luck mixed in. They're playing tight games. Eventually, it's going to slide the other way, bounce here, bounce there. The record could be very different. When you have the best record percentage-wise in baseball and the highest run differential in baseball, that means that you are checking all the boxes that you need to. There is one thing kind of tricky, though, about the Philadelphia Phillies that I'd like to see change. This is my one point of concern with the record. They're 31-12 at home. That's outstanding. They're 20-14 away. That's a relatively noticeable discrepancy when they play at Citizens Bank Park versus when they play anywhere else. And there are weird circumstances, right? Like the Boston and the Baltimore series that they lost, both of them coming back from London. Didn't matter if those were at the bank or if those were on the moon. Like traveling internationally and coming back is going to be a tough thing to deal with. So that messes with it. I mean, who you're playing on the road at this point versus who you're playing at home, it may not be evenly balanced. Maybe playing harder teams away from Citizens Bank Park. So I'm not too worried about it yet. Just something to keep an eye on. It's just when you look at this baseball team, you can feel that they're much different at Citizens Bank Park. So if there's a little improvement, a tweak I'd like to see them make, improve on that away record. And you'll have a chance tonight when you take on the Detroit Tigers on the road out there at, is it still Comerica? I imagine it's still Comerica Ballpark out there. I don't know. I haven't really watched the Tigers consistently. Like I know enough about them, but like actually made them appointment viewing since Miguel Cabrera was in the Triple Crown watch. It's been a minute. And Jim Leland, I think, was still out there coaching that team or managing that team, I should say. No disrespect to the Tigers. I'll say it once and I'll say it again. This is a team you play tonight that is not like the typical punching bag that it might sound like when you hear their organizational name. They can cause a little trouble for you, but the Philadelphia Phillies are the top dog. Every time you walk into a series this year, it's like what they say about a spider, right? You see a spider, you scream, you freak out. And what's the one thing people always say to try and calm you down? Hey, he's way more afraid of you than you are of him. That's what it is anytime the Phillies walk into somebody else's building. You might be looking and say, oh, Tarik Skubal tonight, tough matchup. Oh, good team. They're in first place in their division. Oh, this place we normally struggle to play. And these are all rationalizations of a Phillies fan that I'm not saying you're wrong, but my response would be they're a lot more scared of the Phillies than the Phillies are of any team they're facing. This team's a juggernaut. I've been telling you it for months. It's a beautiful thing to see it reflected in the standings. Let's just check in on the league standings. The Philadelphia Phillies are 4 games up on the Los Angeles Dodgers for best record in the National League. And in the division, the Phils are still 7 games up on the Atlanta Braves for run differential's sake. Phils plus 114. The Atlanta Braves only plus 50. They're pedestrian this year. They're 500 on the road. They're just not that good of a baseball team right now. All due respect. I mean, at 43-32, still 9 games over 500. I'm not saying the Braves stink. I'm not saying they're in any trouble missing the postseason because I don't think they are. But what I am saying is there is a clear new top dog in the National League East. And if the Phillies continue to just, even play like 500 ball or 1 game above 500 every couple, and the Philadelphia Phillies will find a way to win this division. It's a long way to go. They got to stay healthy, but I feel good about where they're at. Speaking of staying healthy, I haven't jumped into it too much yet because he's not starting tonight and he wasn't on tab to start tonight. But Taijuan Walker had a bit of an injury situation, quote unquote. Kind of talked about that before on the podcast. We're going to dive into that in tomorrow's episode, along with a recap of tonight's matchup with the Detroit Tigers and a preview of Game 2. But that's all for today's episode. So thank you again for checking us out on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Please make sure you're rating and reviewing wherever you consume your podcasts, and go to that Locked On Phillies channel on YouTube. Hit the subscribe button. That really, really helps us out here on Locked On Phillies. It's the #1 way you can say, hey, I love your content. So feel free, leave the comments, leave the reviews. But if you really like the content, hit that subscribe button. It's free. It gets you notifications when new episodes are posted. That's the way to do it. So again, thank you for joining us. That's all for today's episode. Hopefully the Phils can knock back another win. It would be their third straight if they can win tonight, and it'd be knocking off a pretty good pitcher. So we're rooting for the Phils as always, and hopefully we're recapping a win tomorrow on our next episode.